I am sorry to see Monica go. Yeah, sorry to see Monica.
Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Westerville City Schools Board of Education. The agenda will be displayed on the screens in the front of the room for you to follow along. There will be two opportunities this evening to address the board, the first being agenda item 3.1. The first set of public comments is relative to agenda items 4.1 through 5.2. Please state the agenda items you are referencing at the beginning of your comments. The second opportunity is agenda item 6.1. There is a sign-up sheet located on the back table in the back of the room. Each speaker will have 5 minutes to address the board, and a timer will be shown on the screen. And with that, Ms. Marshall, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Bell?
Here.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Here.
Ms. Cotter? Here. Mr. Velardo?
Here.
Mrs. Davidson?
Here. Will you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up, 3.1, we have public comments, and we do not have any this evening. So that takes us right to personnel. 4.1 through 4.7, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. And Dr. Hopkins is with us this evening.
Good evening, President Davidson, members of the board, and Dr. Kellogg. I'd like to present for your consideration tonight's personnel consent agenda. Some of the highlights included in tonight's consent agenda are as follows. We have a total of 9 resignations from various classified and licensed positions. We have the contractual status changes for our health aides, the employment of 1 individual to a classified position, and the employment of 2 licensed administrators. And with the board's permission, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our new licensed administrators because they're with us this evening. First, I'd like to ask for Megan Foreman-McCullough to please stand. We'd like to welcome Megan as the new principal at Hanby Elementary School. Megan has 6 years of principal experience at the elementary level with Big Walnut local schools. And if her name sounds a little familiar to you, she was an interim principal for us at Amherst at the end of last school year and did a phenomenal job in that capacity. Prior to her tenure as an administrator, she was an elementary teacher at multiple grade levels. The interview team, which consisted of teachers, parents at Hanby Elementary, as well as district administrators, were very impressed with her appreciation and knowledge of Hanby, as well as her desire to build on the school's tradition of excellence that will make her a valued addition to the Hanby family. Megan received her bachelor's degree from Ohio Wesleyan and her master's from Ashland. And as you can see, she's joined here by her beautiful family. I asked if they all want to be recognized, and she said probably not. But they are going to take advantage of the slide on the way out. So that we're excited to have you, Megan, and excited to have your family as also members of the Hanby family. So welcome. Secondly, I'd like to ask Miss Anitra Simmons to stand with us this evening. Anitra will be joining the Westerville Schools community as Heritage Middle School's new assistant principal. Ms. Simmons brings more than a decade of teaching experience in English language arts, as well as a combined 9 years of experience as an assistant principal with Southwestern City and Columbus City Schools. She has specific experience leading project-based learning and design thinking programs with her students and staff, which we believe will be of great value to Heritage and the district as a whole. Ms. Simmons received her bachelor's degree from Dayton University and her master's from Miami University, and she's also working on her doctoral program as well. So we're excited to have her, and she's joined tonight by Drew Tomlin. Dr. Tomlin, of course, Heritage's principal. So, Ms. Simmons, welcome to the Westerville family. Thank you.
Welcome. Very nice.
Any questions?
None.
Ready to vote? Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Cotter?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes. 5.1, levy planning presentation, and we're going to roll it over to Ms. Marshall.
That's me. So I thought it would be helpful to put together a presentation. So we have 2 resolutions in front of you tonight. One is for a bond issue for 1.95 mils and an operating levy of 4.9 mils. And the other resolution is for a bond issue of 1.95 mils and an operating levy of 5.9 mils. So the purpose of this presentation is to compare the two resolutions that you have in front of you for you to make a decision. I want to talk about the state funding proposals. So the state of Ohio did not get a budget in place as required by law by June 30th. So what we have right now is a temporary measure in place that runs through July of 17. We currently have 5 separate funding proposals for school funding that have been presented. So the governor presented his budget in the executive budget, then the House has their version, and then the Senate came up with their version. And in between that time, the Cupp-Patterson work group that we've talked about, I did a presentation earlier in the year on that. They had an original version, and you can see the effect of that on our operating revenues from the original version, and then they've since come back, and that's the revised version and how that would play out as far as revenues to the district, based on the simulations that have been posted by the Legislative Services Commission. The projections here using the most, that we're going to go over today, are using the most up-to-date information that we have available. The Cupp-Patterson proposal has been introduced, like I said, as a standalone bill. We don't expect hearings to be held on that until sometime in the fall. The soonest that would be in place would probably be for the next school year. ODE should update school funding payments by October if the state ever actually approves something. And so actuals will be reflected in the 5-year forecast that's due by November the 30th. So I've updated our current operating needs projections for the general fund. So our May forecast went through, the first fiscal year was 2019, so the first fiscal year is 2020, and the last fiscal year of what will be the forecast in November will be 2024. Revenues assume the school funding based on the Senate proposal and no new operating levy in this slide. Expenditures assume growth for staffing to align with expected enrollment growth, including the addition of a new elementary school in FY23 and a new middle school in FY24. As you can see from the table up here, the deficit spending is projected to begin in fiscal year 21 with $6.4 million and grow significantly to about $40 million by fiscal year 24 without the addition of any new levies. This is the same projections, only with the addition of a 4.9 mil operating levy to begin collections in fiscal year 21, which is delayed by 1 year with a November 5th ballot issue. So it would be for tax year 20 and then collection year 21. So if you just look at the calendar year, so the first half collections that we would see in fiscal year 21, and then a full year collection in fiscal year 22. 4.9 mils would not be enough to maintain programs and services at current levels for at least 3 years, which should be expected from any operating levy. This is the same projections with a 5.9 mil operating levy. To begin collections in fiscal year 21, still delayed by 1 year for collection year 21, tax year 20. A 5.9 mil operating levy would allow for us to maintain our programs and services at current level. The district will most likely need to consider another ballot issue in fiscal year 23 for operating, depending on what happens at the state level during this time period. So this period of time, we'll see 3 separate budget cycles from the state. So we'll have the biennium budget for 20 and 21, the biennium budget for 22 and 23, and then a new biennium budget for 24. This is a graph I put together to show the general fund revenues, expenditures, and unreserved fund balances going back to 2008. The green line shows the revenues, and the red line are the expenditures. The blue line is the unreserved fund balance for the general fund. The years outlined in blue are actuals, and the years outlined in yellow are estimated projections currently. I did want to note that it's been 7 years since the district has asked voters for new operating money. Where's it at? In 2009, the unreserved balance was $3.3 million. The district's monthly expenditures at the time were about $13 million. In 2012, the unreserved balance was $8 million. And this was the year that the district had to move the payroll date because of cash flow issues at the time. The district reduced expenditures between 2011 and 2004 by $12.7 million, with significant reductions that were made. And without additional operating money, the district is projected to see deficit spending beginning in fiscal year 21. In addition to the operating levy, there's also the bond issue, which is 1.95 mils. It would generate $103 million. And the purpose of that bond issue would be for a new middle school, a new elementary school, safety and security updates district-wide, Amherst renovations and additions, including 21st century design, Whittier renovations and additions, including 21st century design, Hawthorne renovations to include 21st century design, and address facilities assessment needs at Hamby, Emerson, and Longfellow. I do want to make a point to remind everyone that the district did acquire land at no cost. We have 2 parcels of land in the southern end in the Minerva Park area, and those would be the sites of the new middle school and the new elementary school. We have entered into an agreement with the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission called the Expedited Local Partnership Program, and it will allow for the potential of a credit of up to 35% on future projects that we'll have. And remember, this is for the first 5 years of the district's 10-year facilities master plan. This shows the annual cost to homeowners per $100,000 home. So the bond issue at 1.95 mils would be approximately $68.25 annually per $100,000 home value. The 4.9 mil operating levy would add $175.50 for a total of $239.75. The 1.95 mil bond issue with the 5.9 mils would add $206.50 for a total of $274.75. I do want to make a note that low-income senior citizens and permanently and totally disabled residents eligible for the Homestead Exemption can exempt up to 25% of their home value. And this is directly from the Department of Taxation's website. So, for example, a home with a market value of $100,000 would be billed as if it's worth $75,000. Residents can contact the county auditor's office to apply for the homestead exemption or to ask questions if they're not sure if they would apply, if they would be eligible. That's all I have. Are there any questions, comments?
I think it's worth pointing out, Nicole, even though you've already pointed it out, I'm just going to point it out again. Your blue line in your line graph is extremely important. Is one of the things that is often talked about is the perceived healthy balance that we have. And what this shows is how very, very quickly that is going to be depleted. And this isn't a surprise. This isn't because, oh my gosh, something terrible has happened. This is the way of doing business, and this is school finance realities. But I think it's important for all of us and everyone who watches this to understand how very quickly that fund balance will be eaten up. I also think it's worth talking about what the unrestricted fund balance means. So and what I'm talking about is with no additional funds, we end up in 24 with a $13 million balance. And that sounds like a lot of money. And in all of our personal lives, that's a lot of money. But $13 million within the context of a school district of this size is not a lot of money. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that amount of money actually is roughly enough to run the district for a month. Is that accurate? A little less than a month, not counting weekends.
Yeah, about 20 days, yeah.
About 20 days. So when we think about both the spending down of the balance that we have accumulated to hold off this day as long as we could, and then we think about what those fund balances actually mean as we look at the eating up of our large balance, it becomes clearer that we are headed for financial difficulties without the influx of dollars. So that's there, and that's been a lot of my thinking around this. It has been a number of years, and I don't know about you, but I've gotten fairly comfortable with my tax bill over that amount of time. And looking at this does cause me to think heavily about what we're doing and what the rationale is. So then as we look at what to do, you presented 4.9, we acted on that. Spent 5.9, we acted on that, and moving forward with those resolutions some time ago so we could talk about them tonight. The 5.9 keeps us off the ballot longer, potentially keeps us off the ballot longer, and potentially reduces the ask later. So in my thinking, if we were going with a smaller millage now, it is in some ways a short-sighted economy to look at it that way, because as I look at everyone who owns property, as we look at what that means for the property tax bills, I not only have to look now, but I have to look out a few years and see where that bill may be, and then I have to identify what the investment is and then make my decision from there. So that's where my thinking is around what you have presented. And I do, by the way, thank you for the clarity of this. I know all of this is difficult to distill down in just a few slides, but thank you for that.
Would it be helpful, Nicole, to say just a couple of words on the non-growth of millage? Millage is voted on. Time passes, increase in expenses, growth of district, etc.
Right, yeah, I do think that that's important. So under Ohio property tax laws, there's the House Bill 920, which is the reduction factor, which means that when we pass an operating levy in this district, that operating levy is set each year, the millage amount is set each year by the county auditor, so that we collect essentially the same amount of money that we did in the prior year. So the only thing that we really see growth on is any new construction that we have in the district. So, and it's only a small portion of the overall increase that we would otherwise receive if we were collecting at the same millage amount each year. And that's the direct result of that reduction factor that was put in place years ago. And so our only ability to raise new money is either the state does something for us or that we ask the voters to approve another operating levy.
That's just a very educational thing. It was for me. That here's the money you voted. Thank you, community. Years down the road, expenses increase. It just does, life. So why can't you make do with what was here already? Because this increases, but this does not. That was just a very one of the key pieces for me to learn. And I just think that this is a complicated process. And it's helpful to clarify that. Thank you. That's all.
I agree with all that has been said. I also think it's important for the public to know that we're not acting, this is not a wish list that we came up with ourselves, but as a board, we are acting upon the recommendations of the Master Facilities Planning Team that made recommendations to us in terms of what the needs are in our district and what needs to be addressed. We're dealing with an aging fleet of buildings that are in need of updating and repair. At the same time, we're facing a continually growing student population. And so part of what this does is better positions us for the future. And I believe acting now is in our best interest because as the population continues to grow, we will be able to better handle that growth. And I'm convinced that kicking the can down the road, it doesn't get any cheaper. So putting it off until it's an absolute drop-dead emergency, it doesn't help us. And so I believe us acting now is in the best interest of our district, our families, students, staff, and the whole community.
I agree that I think we do need to act now, and I think particularly with our older fleet of buildings, I think there's been, we haven't been able to take care of them maybe the way we would have liked to over time, and we need to start moving towards that now and think about increasing enrollment to make sure we have enough facilities to handle that growth. So I do think now's the time, and I think that the 5.9 mil makes it better for the future for the district, and is a little bit more forward-thinking.
My 2 cents, I have had butterflies all day, kind of nervous and milling this over and knowing what is probably responsible to choose for our district and our voters going forward, and then, what I would like to choose. A couple of things that I keep thinking about, Vaughn, you brought it up, was the facilities committee that we brought together. And we kind of mapped out this 10-year plan, and finances for this would help us complete the first 5 years, which is huge and amazing, especially with our increased enrollment, and safety and security is always on everyone's mind, so that would touch those things too. But I'm not an expert, so I would like to ask our treasurer, who deals in this every day, what would you recommend?
I would recommend the 5.9 mils. I think it will allow for us to maintain our programs and services. I think anything less than that, we'll have to look at going forward, things that we can find some cost savings on that might end up making those programs suffer.
Any other comments? Questions?
Well,
Concerns?
in addition to having Nicole weigh in, Ms. Marshall, I think it would also be, it'd be nice if Dr. Kellogg, would you weigh in and share your thoughts with us?
I think you all have hit the key points, from the community involvement piece to the facilities master plan to looking at where we are, the programs and opportunities we've put in place for kids and for our families, and the difference the 5.9 makes. And I think one of the things Ms. Marshall said that is an important piece was the 5.9 positions us for 3 years in a better position, and there's a kind of life cycle to school funding in Ohio that follows that trajectory. And I'll go back and say we will always work to extend that and make it longer and make it more manageable to the best of our ability. We've done a nice job the last several years with that opportunity. The other piece of this is not a big chunk, but just something on the future is what's the state going to do? And what I'm seeing right now gives clarity to 5.9 over 4.9. Had they had other funding formulas been put in place and been satisfied, that might have made a difference. But I think we know what the writing on the wall is for the future. So we need to position ourselves around this projected state biannual budget over the next 2 years, and this gives us that what we need. And as a reminder, it is a year delay collection on the operating side of this one. So, and the importance of the bond issue is just critical moving forward to us. I think this is the right move. 5.9 is the right move on the operating side.
Anything else? Okay. 5.2, resolution determining to proceed with an issue of bonds and a levy of an additional tax in excess of 10 mil limitation and certifying the same to the Board of Elections, 4.9 mils. May I have a motion? Hearing no motion or a second, the agenda item will not be considered. 5.3, a resolution determining to proceed with an issue of bonds and a levy of additional tax in excess of 10 mil limitation and certifying the same to the Board of Elections, 5.9 mils. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Marshall?
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.